Hey guys, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Jamie. This will be a reading for Cancer, Sun, Moon, Rising, and Venus placements. Now, if you're completely new to tarot, it's important to understand that not every Cancer reading will be for you. So if you feel like I'm wrong or this isn't your story, you're right. Please do not ever take a reading that just doesn't fit your life. I'm going to pull cards like King, Queen, Emperor, and Empress. And those cards describe a personality, but don't really have anything to do with the sex or gender of the person that we're describing. So if I pull a queen, I could be talking about a guy. If I pull an emperor, we could definitely be talking about a woman. There's just no sex or gender, okay? If you want to catch more readings, you can subscribe by hitting subscribe. If you click the bell, it'll notify you when I post. I do also offer a membership. If you want to check that out, you can just click join. It'll show you everything I do over there. I love this deck, but it's so big. It's not the easiest for me to shuffle. Okay, Cancer. Okay, so the first card out here is the Ace of Wands. Yeah, the Two of Pentacles, the Three of Swords, and at the bottom of the deck, the Emperor, Aries energy. Someone has like a really, really rich inner world. I'm talking to somebody who's like very imaginative, very creative. Like, you know, if you were to like watch this person throughout a day, they might like work and stuff like that, but they'll like sit down and like sketch or like paint. And somebody who just probably does all of these things, you know, they just like they really prefer time alone where they can, you know, take in new information, you know, learn new things and, you know, craft whatever kind of skill it is that they have. Someone just has a, like I said, a very rich inner world, and they don't necessarily require other people. In fact, I think they sort of struggle with other people. That's what I'm getting here. It's and I can relate. I understand. You know, some people are like introverted. They're totally like socially acclimated. You know what I mean? They totally can be social. They just prefer to be home. And then there are some people who really can't grasp from human relationships maybe what other people can, if that, you know, like from the emotional connection of a human relationship that some people like, you know, find satisfaction in. Some people really just don't. You know, they may have like a few close people that they find satisfying, but they don't, you know, they're not satisfied with like tons of like friendships or like, you know, there's a lot of people. Now, with this being said, I think that because of this, only having very specific connections, to lose one is very traumatic. So, like, you know, if you only ever, your whole life really had like three close friends, and I said had because one fell off, like, that was deeply traumatic, you know? Like, when you bond with people, it's very, very deep, and it's hard to really cut ties with that person. For some of you, you feel like it's kind of best to be on your own. You know, like I'm getting this Emperor just kind of like you feel like you are in control when you're alone. and doing your thing here, you know. And if you involve too many people, your peace gets disrupted. Things become too chaotic. You know, I feel like maybe people are like, it's just too much. It becomes like overstimulating over time, you know, to like keep up with like these real time relationships. And I feel like the connections that you do have, usually there are people who genuinely understand you or could even be more like you. But I think because of your own energy too, you realize that sometimes this causes the tension. This is the struggle sometimes that causes the break because you maybe like super, super independent and don't feel like you need other people around or like you need their support. Some people could feel like, you know, you're not as connected as you feel they are. You know, there's a struggle with meeting people at the emotional level that they have. You just don't think like they do and therefore feel like they do. And sometimes I think this can create tension or misunderstandings with the people that you may care about. What it comes off as is sort of like a social confusion. Where do I really belong? I seem to be fine by myself. I'm not looking for a place to belong, and you know that can be a really powerful place to be in. And then if other people can't understand that position, though, it can feel to them like you don't really care if they're around, you know. And I kind of hear people talk about things like this a lot, and I have to remind them like that other people think differently than them. You know, it'll be like, you know, this person hasn't hit me up in like 3 weeks. So obviously they don't really fuck with me. And it's like, some people don't think like that though, you know? It's like out of sight, out of mind. Like they get busy doing something, they're just distracted and they forget. And 3 weeks later, they're like, oh, hey, what's up, man? It's, you know, it's like just two totally different ways of thinking. And it doesn't actually mean necessarily one thing or the other, but because two people think differently, they're affected by what's happening differently. And it is a struggle for everybody, not just you. You could feel alone in this, but it's a struggle for everyone, not just you. Interesting. I'm also getting that like you could struggle with some of the closer relationships that you have when it comes to the emotional connections that they have in life. Like they could see you maybe as like unempathetic or something because again, maybe you don't really like get as emotional, like you just think really clearly, you know. So like, you know, you might, it could come off to other people like, you know, like you're unempathetic or like you don't care because you're just like giving like a really logical, you know, like logical advice to them or something. You know, it could, it just like, it feels like misinterpretations, different ways of thinking. For some of you, this could be in the reverse. You know, there could be someone in your life where you feel like they really don't give a shit about you. Because they just go like X amount of time without talking to you like it ain't shit, you know, and then they just come around like nothing happened. You're like, what the hell's wrong with this person? They don't think like you. Doesn't mean they don't care. They just don't, you know, like they just think differently. And it's important sometimes to not misinterpret someone else's like behavior or like the way that they move as like something that we're doing, or you know, like to internalize it and make it about us, because it can be just absolutely incorrect. The Knight of Swords, the Two of Wands, bottom of the deck, the Five of Cups. of the Three of Pentacles. Somebody's trying to figure that shit out, though, because this ain't the first time that they've been misinterpreted or, like, misunderstood. So they're trying. What I like about this is, again, someone's logical. So instead of getting emotional and trying to deny that there's some type of way, it's like, well, that's a weird reaction because someone else said that to me before too. Am I like this? What am I supposed to be like? I can fucking relate so hard. Like, how do I approach this? I do see it though. Someone's like, kind of like, maybe I kind of need to like really kind of maybe like think before I just say things, or just maybe, you know, this is stressful, and I feel like it's stressful for someone else trying to figure it out. You know, like they just don't get it. They just don't. That you know, and I understand from a level that some people wouldn't, where they don't understand that like you're not coming from a bad place. You're coming from a non-emotional place. Like I do empathize. That's why I'm telling you the truth, or that's why I'm just saying it like this, so you can you know like you can break from this, or you know, it's something like that. You know, where what I'm questioning here is someone seeing themselves as the bad guy, and this is just like an absolute struggle. And maybe they shouldn't just like be around people, and they just shouldn't deal with people because people think they're kind of like a jerk because you know they just don't have the ability to like sugarcoat it. It's not unempathetic, you know. It's just not really sugar coated. Like, and what I want to ask you here is, you know, are there other people around who respect you for that and fuck with you for that? Because sometimes we just don't align with other people. You know, we just aren't a match for them. We think differently, and so we're not compatible. Doesn't mean I'm a terrible person. Some people they're expecting something different than what I am, and I can't be that, and that's okay. You know, other people love me for who I am. It's okay to be aware. You know, maybe I should sometimes just not speak, or sometimes kind of be careful of what I say, or just know my situation better before just saying something, you know. But to see ourselves in this kind of like, ooh, I keep fucking these things up. I gotta fix this. There's something wrong with me. I'm not, you know, I feel like if this is your personality, it's who you are. Obviously, other people accept it. You can too. Sometimes, you know, and I think that somebody sees themselves as not like everyone else and not necessarily in a good way. Well, you know, and they're seeing themselves as having a struggle that other people don't. But I assure you that, like, most people really struggle in these departments, you know? I mean, there's like entire like branches of like therapy made just to like work on these aspects in life. These are the hard parts. It is very hard to maintain connections because it requires a lot of maintenance, and you're self-aware, and you know, if you can apologize and maybe try to look at it differently, sure. But I don't feel like you know, are so awkward and so weird and so different from everyone else that you shouldn't have any connections, and maybe you should just stay the hell away from everyone else because you really kind of prefer to be alone anyway. You can really have the best of both worlds, you know. It's just like it's okay if somebody decides that, you know, the two of you are too different to, you know, hang out, or because I don't, you know, this is not looking romantic at all, you know. This is looking socially awkward. Like, it's very hard to like start any type of new connection, and it's also really hard to maintain the ones that I have. But I feel like we're all out here trying to just juggle life, work, friendships, family, and love, and it's really hard to do, you know. So give yourself some slack, you know. At least you're self-aware. At least there's a lot of people walking around that would just see the other person as the fucking problem. Oh, you just can't handle the fucking truth. You're just delusionally stupid, you know. instead of seeing it like, well, maybe sometimes I could say things a little differently or whatever, But it's not like you're dismissing another person, but I don't think you should look at yourself in this way that's kind of like you're a bad friend or you're just so fucking weird. I think that's how somebody feels, like they're just so awkward with other people. And again, not really finding a lot of benefit in the relationships of other people. And so that makes it even less tempting to even try. And I understand, I do. Well, I mean, it'll be okay with the Three of Pentacles. I mean, like, I think that you're already kind of looking at something that's going on here. You're already trying to understand your friends' perspectives, or the people around you, period. It doesn't have to be friends, but other people's, like, perspectives. I don't feel like you're judging them for the way they think. You just feel judged for how you think. I feel like you're in an okay space. It's just accepting that not everybody's gonna stay in our life and not everybody's gonna like us, and that's just that. I don't know. I think that too. It's important because I could be talking to somebody who's like obviously like much younger than me. It's important to note that every year you're just gonna lose a couple of friends along the way until you do get to this point where like you do just have a few friends, and just like you're grown ass people, so you're busy, so you're not always like around each other. And they're just good, solid connections where you guys get together sometimes and reminisce. And, it's like you eventually lose the quantity and only keep the quality. And don't get so hard on yourself. This seems like a natural, like, ebb and flow of relationships. And if somebody else isn't going to, like, work it out with you or try to understand where you're coming from, that's okay. Because I'm kind of in a situation where you're looking at like nobody was wrong, like you just really like gave your opinion, or you just say things how you feel, but you also feel like the other person was right to feel hurt or whatever. So I don't know. I'm just saying, don't, as the cards would suggest, I wouldn't see yourself as the whole issue here. Obviously, the other person, 50% of the problem here is someone else also misunderstanding, miscommunicating, and being emotional. Anyway, reviewing your relationships, all of them, not just romantic. I feel like I always have to remind people of that in tarot for some reason. Kind of seeing where you went wrong is a good thing because that's where we grow and we change. But I think that you don't want to get really critical of yourself here where you feel like, you're a big dummy or, sometimes you're just mean, or something like that. I feel like these are common occurrences where sometimes we're going to bump heads with people and they're just not for us. Sometimes later they come around. What's really really interesting about whoever I'm speaking to here is that like they're not even hurt by like this. Like if this person chose to never speak to them again, it would be okay. They just don't like that they've hurt someone else. There's like so much innocence to it. So if you're cross watching and someone like said something that was like too blunt, or like you just couldn't understand where they were coming from, or even if this is you and it's in the reverse, just understand if this is going the other way around, somebody is way more fucking innocent than you think. Like they really, really only come from like the best of intentions when they're speaking to people they care about, and they really only would give advice to somebody they really, really gave a shit about. You know what I mean? No matter how rough it was, like they wouldn't even be around somebody they didn't care about, let alone give them advice. Or to keep it real, whoever I'm reading on here, like this person generally would not even sit down and listen to another person's problems. They just wouldn't do that. They don't like that shit. They like to be alone. They don't like drama, you know? So to understand that them listening to what was going on with you and trying to give you advice, like really came from the very, very best of places in their heart. They just think and emote differently than you. Okay. Any advice? I have the Eight of Cups. The Hermit. So I think it's just kind of like, let it go. Let them go. Let them go do whatever they need to do. And you just pay attention to you here. Don't worry too much about this person. You might have hurt them in the moment, and that's true. They might come back around, and the two of you can hash it out. And if not, okay, it was just a misunderstanding. It doesn't, it's, the idea here is you're paying attention to yourself. You're reflecting on what you did wrong here, and that's already the bigger person, okay? And sometimes we just have to let people exit our life. Even if it's just for a short period, just let them go. And give them some space, it's just a misunderstanding. And so if someone takes it to a level where they never speak to you again, is that really on you? All right. I'll see you soon.